Hi class, welcome to part 4 of our lecture on the nervous system. We've already discussed the parts of the brain and the central nervous system. Today we're going to start discussing the peripheral nervous system. Now here's the nervous system in the central and the peripheral. Now the peripheral is divided into two sections, the autonomic and the somatic. Remember, the peripheral nervous system is all the nerves outside the brain and spinal cord. So the brains that branch out away from the brain and spinal cord are peripheral nerves. Autonomic stands for automatic. Think about it as automatic. Those are the nervous impulses you have no control over. The somatic nervous system are more voluntary. That's the nerves that control the movements of your skeletal muscles. You're in control of when you move your muscles. So voluntary is somatic, and involuntary is autonomic or automatic. And then when we talk about the autonomic or automatic, there are again two branches of that, sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So let's talk about that in a little more detail. Let's go ahead and put our notes up. And the peripheral nervous system, again, the somatic. Okay, somatic is the efferent division, the nerve signals that are going away from the central nervous system. So if you want to move your arm, the signal is going to go away from your brain to your arm so you can voluntarily move it. Autonomic means, for example, like your heartbeat, your blood pressure, digestion. Those are body functions that you can't control consciously. Now, we have two types of autonomic responses. Sympathetic is often called the fight or flight response. When you are afraid, you're startled, your body automatically prepares itself to respond to that emergency. You often hear people in an emergency situation, they ask, oh gosh, how did I deal with that? They say, I don't know, I didn't think, I just responded. That's your sympathetic nervous system responding. When we think about the terrorist acts of 9/11, by the time the people were on the third plane, or I'm sorry, it would have been the fourth plane, had the two planes hit in New York, the one plane hit the Pentagon, and then there was another plane headed to Washington, D.C. Okay. By that time, the whole country was scared. Everybody knew what was happening, and people were making calls to their loved ones on that plane, telling them what was going on. Those people on that plane were scared. Their sympathetic nervous system took over. They were prepared to fight. So they fought those terrorists, and they ended up making the plane crash in a field in Pennsylvania instead of Washington, D.C. So that's an example of the sympathetic nervous system. Now to counteract that, because we can't be in that state of tension all the time and high blood pressure, we have the parasympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic is is also called the rest and digest actions, because this system takes over when we need to do relaxation type responses. For example, when you're digesting your food, everybody's mom tells them, don't go swimming until it's been an hour since you've eaten. Well, if you try to exercise right after you've eaten, the two systems are kind of in conflict with each other. Your body needs to rest so that the hormones and the digestive juices can properly be released and respond. You also need the parasympathetic nervous system to kick in when you want to go to sleep or relax. So that's the difference between the systems. So, central nervous system, let's review, central nervous system, brain and spinal cord. peripheral, everything surrounding those. Peripheral is broken down into two systems: somatic, voluntary control; autonomic, involuntary control. Under involuntary control, autonomic, we have the sympathetic, fight or flight, and the parasympathetic, rest and digest. So those are all the divisions of the peripheral nervous system. Now the last thing we need to discuss is how does alcohol affect the nervous system? Alcohol and other drugs. Well, we talked earlier about neurotransmitters that are released into the synapses. Synapses is taking the nervous impulse from the end of one axon to the dendrites of the next neuron. Those neurotransmitters cannot function properly and be released properly if drugs or alcohol are in the system. The effect on the body is the judgment is impaired and you lose your inhibitions. That means you tend to act like an idiot. Now, if you've ever seen anybody under the effects of a drug or alcohol, I think that's one of the best deterrents to using them, because you see how ridiculous people look and act. Another great reason, if that's not convincing enough, is you're poisoning yourself. Okay? Alcohol is broken down in the liver. Alcohol is a poison. The liver breaks it down into acetaldehyde, another poison. So this is when you hear people talking about having a hangover effect. The first wave of poison from the alcohol provides the drunkenness inhibition effect. The second wave of poison provides the sick hangover effect. And let's not forget the main reason why we shouldn't use alcohol. We're not glorifying God by drinking wine, getting drunk, leading to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit. So it's not glorifying God, it's not treating your body as a temple when you abuse drugs and alcohol. Long-term effects of drugs and alcohol, you're killing your brain cells. The neurons cannot tolerate that. The liver eventually becomes damaged. Hepatitis, cirrhosis. Your liver isn't going to regenerate itself. When your liver is gone, life cannot be sustained. The liver is one of the most vital organs in the body, does all the detoxifying, and has lots of other jobs which we've talked about in digestion already. Also leads to kidneys failing, heart disease, birth defects. If women drink during they're pregnant, it's a very high chance that the child, especially during the first trimester, is going to be born with birth defects. So, this ends our lecture of the nervous system.